Hello there, thank you for tuning in. So, this episode is a continuation of the previous episode that spoke about the violence that happened in Jamia Millia Islamia and Aligarh Muslim University on 15 December 2019. In the last episode, we spoke about how it spiraled out in Jamia Millia Islamia, and in this episode, we are going to look at what happened in Aligarh Muslim University in Uttar Pradesh. So, if you're new to Kakilan, please check out the previous episode, which will give you more context to what we are going to say next.
The recollection, it's like always, it's emotional. I mean, sometimes, it's like you don't want to go down that memory lane because it has, because of the trauma associated with it. But of course, there's also a sense of responsibility towards this recollection, just as it was during the documentation while we were giving our testimonies. Our whole idea was this should not be forgotten. This has to be on paper. This has to be written that this happened. And everything should be marked in stone, and we're not going to forget it. And that's why I think even pre 15 December, there were lots of events that were conducted purely for the purposes of recollection of previous injustices. And that is the case with 15 December too. It's absolutely important to not forget that it was an unprecedented event in the history of both the institutions.
After hours of police action inside the campus of Jamia Millia Islamia in New Delhi, following a huge protest outside the headquarters of Delhi police, activists and civil society members from and around Jamia Millia Islamia were able to get inside the campus and help the wounded and traumatized students to get out of the campus. And it looked like the hostilities was finally getting to settle down. It was at this point of time when people started to hear from Aligarh Muslim University. Distress calls were made saying that police had entered the campus and similar pattern of violence has begun. You're listening to Kakilan, Stories of Policing Muslims in India. In this episode, we speak to witnesses who saw what happened in Aligarh Muslim University on the night of 15 December 2019.
I came to AMU in 2014, so every year since I joined the campus, we had a Babri Remembrance protest or public meeting since I came. Like I was the one who organized it. So from Delhi I went back to on 5th I traveled to 5th December I traveled to Aligarh to organize that public meeting. On 6th we did organize a meeting, and towards the end of that meeting only all of us discussed that so and so bill is coming, it might be tabled very soon. At that time it wasn't tabled yet, but there was a lot of discussion around it.
That is Shajil Usmani, a noted student activist from India. So according to him, on 6th December 2019, the day people commemorates the demolition of Babri Masjid, the students of Aligarh Muslim University made sure that they would have a protest against the proposed Citizenship Amendment Act, which was not tabled at that point of time.
So on 7th we started the protest against CEA, and that was the first day when 1200 students were booked for violating. So as soon as the protest was announced, the police placed this section 144 curfew. So curfew usually is for on the civil areas outside the city. The protest was inside the campus, so the students naturally thought that this should not affect what is happening inside the campus. So they anyways protested, and then 1200 students were booked. 1200 unnamed students were booked. And this unnamed thing is very important, which we later came to know. Then only it was decided that this is not this should not be a one-off stand, that we registered our protest and we should go back. And at that night it was decided that we'll block one of the main gate of the campus and we'll sit there demanding protests to show our anger to the government, also to the opposition parties. Also we sat on 8th to join the protest. On 8th we had it was a normal protest, and I mean it wasn't a big protest in the sense that it was still limited to the campus. The civil population outside the Aligarh was not affected by it, or they weren't interested also in it. Come 9th, we decide that this is not working and it is not getting the kind of urgent attention it needs. So around all the AMU is primarily a residential campus, so almost more than half of the students they live in the hostels. So it was decided that everybody in the campus would sit on a hunger strike. So students locked all the dining halls. There was no food cooked in the campus. So in a way, more than 25,000 students sat on hunger strike. And that's when the protests started gaining some momentum in Aligarh. The bill was tabled on 11th. On 10th, to join the protest, we had Sharjeel Imam, Abdullah Azam, some student leaders of Bapsa. Because nothing was happening in Delhi, so they came here to give their support to the protest. The next day, Umar Khalid and Yogendra Yadav were supposed to come. At the last moment, Umar said that he won't be able to come. His sister was coming from US and she'll be here for a couple of days only, so I want to spend time with her. And so he only suggested that instead of me, call Dr. Kafil. He's with me right now in Delhi and he is ready to go. So I said, okay, we'll invite him. A case was registered against Kafil Khan, but not against Yogendra Yadav, which was absurd. I mean, in his speech, Kafil Khan was actually asking us, we were very angry with what he said. He was sort of saying that, implying that we should prepare our papers and all. And that was sort of the antithesis of what we are trying to do in the. And in between these 3-4 days, at least 2,000 more students were booked in an unnamed FIR. Up until that point, there was no wall in the campus. On 13th, there was a long march from the campus to the city center. And the entire police machinery, RAF, and all, PAC, all of them, they surrounded the campus. Several hundred officers at each gate. So there was a bit of tussle between the students and the police. At that day only, the SSP of Aligarh, he gave a speech on a mic from to the protesters, saying that we don't have any problem with you if you want to protest, but do so in democratic way, otherwise you'll face the wrath of state. That was the first day when violence happened in Jamia. Then we saw these pictures coming from Jamia where students were beaten up and handled on 13th during their parliamentary march. We in Aligarh don't have a parliament to march to. This was the first instance when the local population also, so a lot of Muslim students from the campus started visiting the Muslim areas of the Aligarh city to inform them what this bill is, what it could mean, etc. etc. 14th was also a mundane day. I mean, students were protesting. There was no standoff with the police or any official. Meanwhile, the university administration was obviously harassing students, threatening them, etc. etc. My father he teaches at AMU, so he was summoned by the vice chancellor. He was threatened that remove your son from the protest site, otherwise. The DM was also present at the time. He said that he'll be booked under NSA if he doesn't go. On 15th, a protest had just happened in the campus, and on 15th we started visiting all the protesting group started visiting all the residential halls to sort of invite them. We were preparing for something, a long march to Delhi, something like that, to convince them that why this is important. So we started visiting all the reading halls, common rooms, libraries. On 15th evening, we were sitting. So a general body meeting was called at the library canteen after Asr. By Maghrib, we started getting news about huge violence in Jamia against students in Jamia by the police and RAF. The videos and all started floating by Maghrib, and then after Maghrib only I got a call from a friend of mine, Hamad. He had done his bachelor's from him. He was studying in Jamia, mass comm only. So he called me. He was trapped in a library, and he was crying. So, and meanwhile the students where I was in middle of a meeting, and the students were shouting at each other. No, this should not be done, and this should be done. Like it was typical student GPM. Like several opposing parties fighting, verbally fighting with each other. And in that setting, I got this call, and I simply put it on speaker. This is what is happening in Jamia. Our fellow brothers are getting beaten up, and we are still quarreling among ourselves.
It was not just Shajjul Usmani who was getting calls from Jamia Millia Islamia. Jamia Millia Islamia and Aligarh Muslim University share something very special. These institutions, which are older than independent India, remains the most valuable assets for the community in India. In every classroom in both the campuses, you will find students who have migrated from Aligarh to Jamia and Jamia to Aligarh.
So everybody has some relative or friend in Jamia. Both the institutions are sister institutions. Most of the people, if they do their bachelor's in AMU, they go for masters in Jamia, or bachelor's in Jamia, masters in AMU, sort of that. So others also started getting calls, so they were very angry, and then this news came on Facebook. Somebody posted that, a prominent activist only posted that a student has died in police firing. That was when that news was announced, the meeting was like over then. Then everybody started marching to all the halls to gather students that will protest, and will have a Ghayabana Namaz-e-Janaza at the gates of the university. So we collected all the students. We only went to the halls closer to the library canteen. We thought others would join later when they hear the news and all. So when we are reaching the gate of the university, we saw that there's already a huge presence of police and RAF, and they had barricaded, as if they were expecting it. Usually the police is present like year round near the gates of the campus. One truck of PSC would always be there stationed near one of the gates of the campus. So that has been a norm, but this was a proper barricading, and with that helmet, and they have this shield, and the lathis. So we did not cross. We saw that so we were on this side of the gate. They were on the other side of the gate. There were some reporters also with the police, a lot of reporters. But we suspect that those people weren't reporters. They were people affiliated with right-wing Hindutva outfits. So because they were the ones who started pelting stones at the students. Since the students were also emotionally charged, when the second or third stone came, I remember Azib, a friend of mine, who's Kashmiri, he was hit here on his head. He was bleeding, so we took him to there's a guest house near the gate. We took him there. We called the AMU is one of the campuses where they have a medical college also. So we called the RDA union president, Residential Doctors Association president, to ask him to send an ambulance for Azib. Meanwhile, one of the students, upon seeing the stones being pelted from the other side, he crossed over the gates. He did not open the gate. He crossed over the gate to deal with them. He thought that police is already there. There will be some scuffle, and then be removed, and he'll be also taken or whatever. I don't know what he thought. As soon as he went to that side, he was like beaten up almost. I mean, it was really like dozens of people beating a single. And students are already angry. They have heard that a student has died in Jamia and seen the pictures of crackdown in Jamia students. They broke open the gate to stop that guy from getting beaten. That was the only intention initially. And then police started lathi charging from that side. There were like several hundred police officers and then several hundred students also. Then started the clash between the students and the police. It was still not something that we thought that it would be a replication of Jamia. We have had a standoff with police in the past week several times, and before that also AMU has a history. Since Modi came to power, there has been lots of protests, lots of crackdown on students, but still it wasn't, we were still considered as students only. In our own campus, we were like inside our campus, we were free to do, usually students are free to do peacefully whatever they want to do in the campus. But this was different. They started, first started lathi charging, and then they saw that too many of them, they aren't going back with the lathi charge. They started, they took out their arms, they started firing. And there are several videos also where they can be seen abusing, making several deeply Islamophobic comments, abusing and sort of as if they have something to take vengeance for against these students, and very spiteful way, as if their intention wasn't to control the student but to target them. And that's what happened for the next. This started at around 7:30 to 8, and this went on until 3:30 or 4 in the morning. And eventually RAF also joined them, and they came inside the campus. Even after the students retreated and went back to their campuses, the RAF entered the campus, they burned down. So there was a student who was hiding in his own hostel room. The room had a window. The RAF shooted a what do you call it? A smoke cannon. Inside the room, while a student is there in a closed room, and the room caught fire, and several others were picked up. Whoever they got hold of, they picked up. They tortured them brutally. Several of the testimonies also came out. They stripped naked some of the students. I know 2 students whose hands were like, they had a broken hand, but see, hands usually break near the joints. His was broken here. I mean, I can't imagine the kind of torture he endured. In the violence itself, a student lost his hand because of the stun grenade fire. So in total, the police used stun grenades against students, assault rifles. Initially, they used rubber bullets, then tear gas cannons. We got hold of one can. We searched about it. It's sort of banned and expired also. This went on until the next day, and so the entire night went in that. It's cold December night. There were many students who couldn't go to their rooms also. So since it was dark, they hid behind some tree or in some ground, like they laid flat on the ground so that the RF wouldn't be able to see them. Next morning, we hear that the RF has taken over the campus,
I mean, you're right to point out that there is a very simplistic narrative that the police did what the police is supposed to do, which is to maintain law and order. But I think there is also, a large, a big case can be made for the fact that maybe 15 December was actually a planned event. Now, I'm not saying this for certain, and this can't be said for certain, but the way things happened, at the same time in Jamia and AMU, how all these RAF forces were stationed outside the university circle that day. And there's also, so many things like the availability of stones, near Babi Sayed, and many other things, like the gates were closed before the students even reached there. So everything sort of, I'm sort of portraying it in a way where you can see that there could have been some sort of planning involved in what happened on 15 December, because it was not a standalone event that students were protesting. About 10 to 15,000 students were gathering near the Babi Sayed every single day, and the gate was not closed every single day, but it was closed on 15th December. And the way it happened was, while students were gathering near the library canteen, when we heard about what happened in Jamia that day, there was there was a shock, and there was sadness in the air, and there was also a desire in students to do something about it because of the connection that AMU holds with Jamia.
Warda Mirza Beg was one of the student leaders who were part of the protest on that day. As a law student, she has been part of the fact-finding committees who looked into the violence that happened in the campus.
So it was not like the police entered and the police left and they maintained law and order. It could have been a planned event, and also the police stayed in the campus, and also the fact that there was a sign dive which immediately followed the violence, after which RAF forces freely moved in the campus. You could find them. There are pictures of them, sometimes even coming back for a cup of juice inside the campus, or just merely strolling about the campus as if they are just freely supposed to be there, and their existence is not an unusual thing in the campus. So no, it not just that they barged in, but also they stayed and they owned the campus that's supposed to be regulated by university staff and university's own guards. Another fact that sort of points to that is also the burning down of a room in Morrison Court. And there's so much CCTV footage of policemen and RAF forces taking their big white vans into hostels. So if the event had happened in this particular place, which is this area around Babi Sayed, why did the police feel the need to go inside hostel rooms? Why did the police feel the need to go inside guest houses? It's because, like you said, it was a complete siege, and they owned the campus that night at least, and also several days following that night.
After every 200-300 meters, there's a checkpoint with an RAF vehicle with several RAF men in boots with weapons guarding the streets. We were used to protest. Generally every 3-4 months there's some protest in campus, big ones also. But this was still new because police doesn't usually enter inside the campus, and if the students and police don't want to clash, the students would be at the edge of the campus boundaries and police would be other side, with the intention being that if the students cross, they would push them back in. This time the students were inside. The police came inside, RAF came inside, and they attacked the students. By the next, when it was happening, we did not think much of it, but after things got calmed down early morning, we learned that this was sort of a replication of what happened in Jamia, but more severe because Jamia still has the privilege of being in the capital. There's a good presence of civil society, media organizations also there. Here, most of the strangers that work in rural cities in UP, they are affiliated with one of the other Hindutva groups. That's one of the things. So that's how it started also here in Aligarh. So the next morning, a delegation came from a few activists came from Aligarh to Delhi. They did the
Aligarh to Delhi or Delhi to Aligarh?
From Delhi to Aligarh to document what happened in Aligarh. That's the only documentation of that night. Immediately after that, and the next day, a petition was also filed in High Court against this attack and aggression by the police and RAF against students. Meanwhile, the admin announced that every student has to vacate their campus and leave, so as to not let the protest happen. But and that happened. The police, the government gave these government buses, roadways buses, provided those to the university admins to just fill up students and send them back to their homes. They shouldn't be here. Otherwise, the intention was to basically stop them from protesting. But as Aligarh woke up, people started hearing about what happened in the campus. The students came on, the local population came on street in protest.
So before 15 December, you're right, students were taking part, everyone was taking part equally in the protest, but female students do have a curfew timing in the campus, which is about 6 p.m. in the evening. It was December, so I think it would have been about 5 p.m. in the evening. So before dark, they have to go back to their own hostels. And obviously, they're not permitted to leave it after that. So incidentally, on that day, on 15 December, I living outside, had the opportunity to be there, but there weren't many girls. So in my memory, there was 3 girls, including me, that day near library canteen. There must have been others, but at least 3 of us were, part of the protest, so to say. But when this incident happened, when the violence took place, we were safely escorted outside by our peers and our colleagues for our safety. We were taken to the guest house first, from where I remember that because we had heard about what happened in Jamia earlier, and there also, information coming in that female students have been harassed by the police. We were in a state of, we were afraid, and we decided that it was not the right time to take the main route towards, out of the university. So we went momentarily to the guest house, and we locked ourselves in the bathroom, and we shut the bathroom from inside. There was 3 women, and I remember we were looking out of the window, and we were seeing this particular sight that does not leave my mind, is of a boy and whose head was covered in blood, and he was being rushed to JNMC on a motorbike. After which we our friends who knew that we were inside, they came and they said, we'll see what's happening later, let's just escort you out first, and then we'll see what's happening at Babi Said, because obviously they had to be there to help others, to take them to the hospital. But I decided midway, on my way to home, I decided that I should go and see what's happening at JNMC. So after that, I went to JNMC, and I recollect that it was very chaotic. So, these stretchers, they were full. There was not enough equipment. That's how many students were pouring in with injuries. After which I went home, and I decided that if I cannot be there, I can at least, go home and talk to the media about it, or just immediately send SOS calls on the internet. One of the testimonies of one hospital staff who was driving the ambulance, who said that he was not being allowed to take students to the hospital, to JNMC. So of course there were all sorts of fears in the minds of students that even staying at JNMC could be dangerous for them. But I was there immediately after it started happening, so students were pouring in. And I remember that our outgoing president was there, and he was being given oxygen, and he was unable to speak. He was unconscious. I met him. I told him what was happening, when he was able to speak, and then I immediately left. So all I saw the kind of injuries we were talking about is, like the head injury that I talked about, and other minor injuries that I did see. But what I did not see on that day is perhaps some things that happened later in the night, because this whole violence took around 4 to 5 hours. Is bigger injuries like that of if I recollect the name rightly, I think his name was Tariq, and he was a PhD scholar who lost basically 3 to 4 of his fingers. Basically, the entire hand had to be amputated, and there was another postgraduate student who also was injured in his hand. So there were larger injuries as well, but by the time I had reached, it was I saw like head injuries, and I did see a couple of open wounds. I mean, I have so much to say about the responsibility the university had, and the way it immediately discarded that responsibility by declaring a sine-die without actually necessarily providing for students from so far as Kashmir and Assam and other places in the northeast to go back to their homes safely. Yes, there were some arrangements that were made, but not offering students more than 6 to 8 hours to pack up and leave without knowing when to come back, right? So that was very irresponsible, of course, but also I cannot say at the same time whether it would have been safe enough to be in the university at that time. So it was actually the responsibility of the university administration to make sure the campus was safe in the first place by not allowing paramilitary forces to get inside the campus in the first place on the night of 15 December. So once that security and that safety was breached, it was breached permanently, and now ever since that has happened, one can never be sure at what point paramilitary forces will be allowed to enter inside our universities again, and at what point history could repeat itself, and perhaps this could be made common. This is one of the fears that students have, because increasingly the administration is allowing police to freely engage with people in the campus, and also so many charge sheets and show cause notices are sent to students for merely organizing completely peaceful discussions inside the campus, and FIRs are filed, unnamed FIRs are filed repeatedly, and that has become also a common practice. So the fact that students were abruptly asked to leave, and a sine-die was declared without a proper notice and enough time for students to pack up is a complete disregard for the responsibility that the university had.
Aligarh Muslim University holds a very sacred place for people of Aligarh in general, and Muslims, Aligarh and Jamia both, they are seen as the centers of Muslim intelligentsia by the community at large, and attack in AMU also has a very sort of, Aligarh people have a strange affection for AMU that when I was a student, I came to witness it. That doesn't naturally happen otherwise. In previous protests also, when students are protesting, say they are sitting there for a couple of years ago, there was this protest against removing a portrait of Jinnah from the Union Hall. So every student was sitting on the street in protest, and the local population of Aligarh, they were the ones who were providing meals for the students, that you don't have to rely on these campus guys. There was actually fight going on between local population. No, today I will make food for them, or I will make. So each mohalla, they were distributing sharbats and things like that. So that has this was not even that used to happen generally in protests. Here now students have like beaten up all night, and sort of weapons that are used in wars were used against students. That made the people very angry. Every Muslim locality in Aligarh was protesting. Several main roads in the city were blocked, and like the admin, Aligarh police and DM, they were too concerned that if the students stay here, this will only grow. So the first thing they did was they forced everybody to leave. Whatever you have, you pack it up and leave. Within a matter of 2-3 hours, the campus was vacated fully. But people were still protesting, and the Sheher Qazi and other influential Muslims of the areas, they were summoned by the DM. They were tasked with removing these people from the streets. But many of the students in the campus who were studying in the campus are also from the city. So they went back to they told them that this is what happened last night, and this is why students were protesting against CA, and this is why CA is. So the protest eventually grew more, and the campus was vacated for 2-3 days, but after on 15th it happened. By 19th, another protest started in the campus with the support of local population, of course. Meanwhile, a lot of students who were after 15 December violence.
There was an internet shutdown also, just immediately with
on the same night only, internet was shut down, and it remained shut down for almost a week.
19th, it gets reinstated.
The protest gets reinstated.
Even the internet also. I was there on 19th.
Acha, 19th. Okay, 19th. I don't remember the details now. On 19th, I wasn't there also. So a lot of students were. There was a couple of FIRs registered. A lot of students were named. I was named as one of the masterminds, and along with me, 4 other people were named as the ones who. And the allegation was that we attacked the police. Like, say, one of the FIRs against me is that I attacked a SI, sub-inspector, along with 19 other people, and I took, I robbed his service gun. And
Did you?
no, I mean, look at me, I'm 19 RF officers were injured in that attack. The police basically claimed that the students attacked the police. Still absurd that the students would be able to attack 19 when they were heavily armed. They used the kind of munitions that they were using. It's all well documented. Some of it was captured in videos of CCTV camera here and there. A lot of it was captured. So the students who were sort of named mastermind and were named in the FIRs, they fled from Aligarh, including me. Police was searching for us. Police came to my house. My father said he's still in the campus. I left for Bulandshahr and then I went to Aligarh, went to Delhi. A couple of friends also went to Delhi with me. Others went elsewhere. On 21st, my house was raided at 1 in the night. And when we reached Delhi, Shaheen Bagh protest had already started, so all of us joined there, and then sort of attack on Jamia and AMU triggered that mass protest. It wasn't for CA as much initially, it was against the brutal crackdown on students.
Right. So recollecting from my own memory, I remember I was live on a page of a students collective that we used to work on, and I was asked by concerned people to immediately remove some of that stuff. So you're right, evidence sometimes is lost, when you're trying to protect yourself, or we're trying to protect students, because obviously the situation was very, very uncertain and very dangerous at that time. But luckily for me, by the time I reached home, we still had internet for a few hours, I think 2-3 hours, before it was completely shut down for a few days. When it was shut down, I remember the only way to get anything through to media, or get anything through to social media also, was by contacting people on the phone. Sometimes phone lines were also not working, and sometimes messages would also not go through. But yes, usually, if at least if the internet was not working, I used to dictate what I wanted to write on social media to a friend, and got them to upload. I gave my credentials, passwords and everything to another person in another state, where there was no internet blackout. And I remember students sometimes had to drive all the way to Delhi to use internet if they wanted to send something out, or if they had something important that they needed internet for. So it was a very difficult time in that sense. We felt like all this happened, and there was nobody to hear us. There was nobody who knew that all this was happening. And a similar incident happened when the February violence took place in Delhi. There was also a day before that violence took place in Aligarh as well. A whole entire market was burned, and 2 people lost their lives in that case. But also on that day as well, because of the internet shutdown and because of what happened in Delhi, it did not really go through to the media as it should have. It did not create any furor, any kind of uproar of sorts, that something so massive has happened in Aligarh. So yeah, it was very difficult because of the internet shutdown. I do feel that being sort of saved from that immediate trauma by my peers and being sent home, I do not have the kind of traumatic recollections of the event as people who actually suffered grave injuries on that night do have. So but the fact that they were my seniors and my friends who got injured, I saw the amount, the grave sacrifice that they had to make that day. I mean, it is beyond my imagination that one day you're thinking that you're just safely walking around your campus, working on your PhD, you're about to submit your PhD thesis, life is going on normally, and on another day something like this happens, and you lose your entire limb to something like this. It is something unimaginable, and the pain of these people is unimaginable to me, both in Jamia and AMU. Also, the second part of your question is about the police and how I feel, and as a law student, and generally as somebody who lives in India as a Muslim, about this. There is video evidence, and we've seen it from our own eyes as well. The things that policemen said before they started firing tear gas shells, or before they started firing the other ammunition, in fact proper firearms were also shot at students. But the things that were said before it, the place where they were coming from, their hatred that could that manifested in their words, which was with the abuse that they were hurling at students, just showed the where all of this was coming from. The utter contempt that they had for Muslims, for the Muslim identity, the words that they use, mullah, and there's other words, very derogatory words, and curses and abuses that they use before they fire. And this thing keeps repeating itself in all the instances of violence that we see. So it was not just in AMU that happened. It happened in Delhi afterwards. It happened in UP afterwards, and also the continued instances like that in Sambhal recently. You always see this pattern that before firing they say something. So you see like the place of contempt from where this violence is coming from, and so that hurts more than the bullet, because it's you see what is it that you're being attacked for. you see it is the Muslimness or the Muslim identity that you're being attacked for. So even if you are an atheist, for instance, but if you have a Muslim name, or if you're not a practicing Muslim but you appear to be a Muslim, you're still at the same risk as the practicing Muslim, because it is the appearance, your very identity, your very Muslimness that is so hated by forces of the state. So that is my idea of what a police force is. I always see them, I always look at them with contempt whenever I pass by the university. I see them, so unnecessarily stationed there, as if, stationed outside, let's say, a war zone. Or it does not make sense in any world to have paramilitary stationed outside university. It just does not make sense to me. And of course I have a lot of contempt for, and a lot of I just find it very, very intentionally traumatizing, intentionally terrorizing areas where Muslims live, to have these forces stationed outside our places.
They are considered as safe spaces where Muslims can go to study. Two institutions which have a minority character, where you can live, exist, study as Muslims, and which are also very good educational institutions, consistently ranked among the best universities in India, consistently given excellent grades by NAC. Their research is very well regarded. So these are institutions of excellence. These are institutions which are known to have a certain quality, very tough to get into, and that also act as safe spaces for especially in North India. I can't say this is a pan-India phenomena, but in North India, from Bengal to Kashmir and everything in between, Muslim communities, you see, if you go to the hostels in AMU, for instance, from the school from 6th standard onwards, you will find a large population of Bengali, Bihari, and people from different parts of UP, because people coming from those areas, from far-flung places, they feel this is a safe space where they can send their children. So that is what AMU and Jamia represents, even to this day. That is what it represents. And then this is also accompanied by something that a lot of people have remarked on, that after the demolition of Babri Masjid, Muslim community, especially in North India, has taken to education as a way of social mobility, as a way of emancipation, and that narrative of education as emancipation, it's very dominant. In that context, AMU Jamia becomes even more important, because then they're not just looking at it as a safe space for education, it's a safe space where you build the community, where you build capacity, where you as a route for emancipation. So it has a lot of emotional salience, a lot of emotional value. So the attack that happened, in the midst of all this, in the midst of anger, in the midst of this very clear sense that something exclusionary is happening, when the visuals of 15th December came out, what was happening in Jamia, what was happening in AMU, there was an immediate reaction. There was an immediate, people connected with it. They felt that these could be their children. These are the spaces where, aspirationally they wanted their children to be. So it felt like an attack on their aspirations, an attack on their ideas of how education being the route to emancipation. All of that narrative, all of that idea that you can study hard, you can get into a good university, get a degree, you can improve your life. It was an attack on those very fundamental ideas. And this is not something that I am just philosophizing or interpreting. This is based on what people across UP told us, in the month of January, February, when we visited post the violence that happened. This is exactly what people across the state were telling us, and this is something that is almost universally felt. So that was, I feel, that accelerated it. But in either case, 11th, the law was enacted, and the next week, 19th, 20th, most places, without any central leadership saying it, without any call being given, there was locally a lot of mobilization had started to happen, and people were already talking about carrying out a massive protest on 19th, 20th, because that much time you sometimes need to mobilize. It was very organic, very spontaneous, and that was the first weekend sort of after 11th December where people thought of mobilizing, and in the middle this 15th, 16th December happened. and that just gave it a whole new impetus, a whole new urgency to what needs to be done.
So universities generally have become unsafe. The life in universities has generally become uncertain. The safety has certainly been compromised in universities around India. So obviously that is an indication of the human rights standard depreciating, right? Because you can see that slowly they're trying to normalize vandalism and violence inside campuses throughout India. But of course, it is, like I said, very important to specify that that the extent of violence that happened, that the extent of state violence that happened in AMU and Jamia did happen because they are concentrated minority spaces.
There has been no progress in the petitions filed against these violence, demanding judicial inquiry and proper compensation. The militarization of campuses that began on 15 December 2019 continue in both the campus. The wafer-thin idea of safety Muslims had because it's a university space were taken away by the events that happened on 15 December 2019. But despite these hostilities, students continue to hold discussions, have protests in these campuses. Following the attack on Jamia Millia Islamia and Aligarh Muslim University, there was a huge crackdown on student leaders who were part of the protest.
And all of a sudden, all of us students also got some social capital, in the sense that people came to know us instantly. From just being students, we became activists. Nobody expected it, nobody wanted it, and it came with several baggages also. And that so while the protest was going on, police was making their own documentation, in the sense who was protesting, who was doing what, etc., etc. And then FIRs started coming. Like for example, on the one of the arguments against Sharjil Imam in the conspiracy case, Delhi violence program conspiracy case, is that he, Asif Mushtaba, who was one of the protesters in Shaheen Bagh protest, and I, on 15 December, were in northeast Delhi distributing pamphlets to people. You have already registered a case against me for looting guns and beating up police officers in Aligarh. The same day I was also with him, and it's mentioned in a lot of these across India. A lot of such FIRs were filed, and once COVID came, the state finally got a chance to act upon those cases that they had filed so far, and the mass arrest started happening. Imam was arrested for a speech that was taken out of context, and it was that was one of the instances where right-wing news organizations sort of showed their power, in the sense that they can criminalize anybody anywhere. I think it began with Imam's arrest. His more than an hour long speech was a 30-second clip was taken out of context, and all these right-wing influencers and media organizations, they started posting it, giving it a completely new meaning, and he eventually had to surrender. Cases in 5 different states were registered against him, and that began. I mean, after that, they write about anybody and you have one case registered in some part of the country. That became a norm after that. Then Safura got shut, Miran got arrested, Safura got arrested, and we sort of realized that, and mind you, this was COVID, this complete lockdown, while every other country, most of the country were trying to battle this pandemic. The Indian government was vilifying common Muslims and arresting Muslim scholars, students. And eventually I was also arrested.
What was your arrest about?
So I was arrested from Azamgarh. Initially I thought it was the cases that I have for CA. because most of my friends were already in jail by that time. So I was picked up. The way I was arrested was not I was expecting, in the sense that I was literally kidnapped off the street by men in civil dresses, and my face was covered with a cloth. I was taken in a car, and the only thing that I told them, I did not pay much heed to it. I just told them that at least inform my family that I am arrested. And I asked them if they were from UP police or Delhi police. I was expecting either. By that time, since a lot of us have already been arrested, we were already in touch with lawyers. Like lawyers were preparing us. It's not a big deal. They will file cases and will go out in 2-3 months. Eventually, that's what happened with me. But I wasn't. Others weren't as lucky as me in that. So in like half, I kept traveling for like a couple of hours, and then they started discussing amongst themselves, and eventually I still can't see. I'm still blindfolded, and then I got to know that they are from ATS, which is the terrorist squad. That's when since I'm from Azamgarh has a very different history with ATS. A lot of Muslim youths have been picked up under terror charges, and they stay in jails for more than a decade, and then they are set free by the court saying so and so was innocent. And hundreds and hundreds of Muslim youths have been picked up, and this happened after Batla's encounter. That's a very different history. That's when I was like afraid what is happening now. Then they took me to, after 6 hours they took me to their campus. At that time I did not know, but it was in Lucknow. From Azamgarh they took me by car to Lucknow. They interrogated, and they asked some weird questions about some terrorist they captured in Nepal, and he's taking my name. I said, how would I know anybody? etc. They did not want answers also. Then they had a list of all other actors who were in Delhi and Aligarh. How do you know him? How do you know him? Name 10 people who were with you, etc. etc. And then they eventually handed me over to the Aligarh police crime branch. And Aligarh police had those 4 cases registered against me. The violence in AMU, protests against Babri Masjid demolition, that, and three cases were for the violence on 15 December. One was for Babri Masjid protest. And eventually I went. They sent me to jail. Nobody came ever. Like, I was in judicial custody. The police did not even seek police custody. I was in judicial custody the whole time. Nobody from the police came ever to talk, to interrogate or whatever. Nothing happened. And then eventually I got bail in a couple of months, 2 months and a half, and I was released.
The attack on AMU and Jamia Millia Islamia on 15 December 2019 is only the beginning of the police actions during the anti-CA protest. A week after attacking 2 of the most important Muslim institutions in the country, police firing killed at least 20 Muslims in several districts of Uttar Pradesh. That comes next in Khaki Land. Thank you for listening.